was again by I Wish I Could Skateboard. I'm Dakota Antelman, and this is 3 Pounds of Pure Culture, the podcast where I take you in-depth into local and hyper-local music that gets its life in the smallest of venues from here in Hudson, Massachusetts, all the way to Boston. Today, as we hinted at in our last episode, we're changing the format a little bit. We're focusing on one band, and that is I Wish I Could Skateboard. We're going to hear from part of the band itself, but before we're going to do that, joining me in breaking this all down again, on the phone from Vassar College is Clement Doucette. Clem, welcome to the broadcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I Wish I Could Skateboard, you've listened to them a little bit, but, an interesting band indeed. They formed a number of years ago in Tyler, Texas, a suburb of Dallas. But lead singer Patrick and bassist Hannah moved to Boston relatively recently. They took a short hiatus, but returned to music just a few years ago. Playing a blend of punk, emo, and math rock, they are outsiders in this scene, but are very bent on becoming a more integral part of the music scene, as I found out from my conversation with them. They recently dropped a single entitled 8 a.m. that they recorded pretty much exclusively in a makeshift studio in their Somerville apartment. And that comes on top of their sort of return to music that they released last year, just 4 years after their debut EP in 2014. So again, as I said, an interesting act indeed with this band. Clem, what are your first impressions on them?
So I first listened to #WillieIPCome because I was intrigued by the title. I guess that's how you say the title. I wasn't exactly sure, but I immediately noticed the band's sort of rhythmic complexity. It starts with those drums, that rhythm's very complex, which I liked. I also liked the sort of retro sound they had. It reminded me of early 90s sort of stuff, particularly bands from Boston from that time period. It's almost like it was reflecting back on the roots of that scene. But when the vocals came in, I liked how they're very sort of raw, pleading sound to them. Which felt very real, which I liked.
Absolutely. With the genre of punk, emo, indie as a whole, I personally love that genre because, I think by and large those raw vocals are, an integral part of this. In this band, again, Patrick McPherson, the lead guitarist in this band, also the lead vocalist, and he is fantastic vocally with this band. Want to shed some light though on that song that you called out there. Actually got the chance to talk to Patrick. This won't be included in the interview that we're going to play later, but I got the chance to talk to Patrick about sort of the origin of that song. And that song apparently, I had trouble with the title. The actual title of it is intended to be read Will Yip Come. And that song was kind of written in response to the presence of a influential music producer named Will Yip, who apparently visited the town of Tyler, Texas, where this band was performing when they wrote that song. And at the time, one of the other members of the band, who again we'll hear from later, James Alvadro, the guitarist, he tried to start a social media campaign using the hashtag #WillYipCome to try to get Will Yip, this major music producer, to come visit their show. Apparently, Will Yip didn't attend the show, but that was kind of the origin of that name. So definitely want to shed light on, kind of as you said, one of the more interestingly titled songs in this band's discography. In terms of my first impressions, though, definitely hearing a lot of the same things you were hearing. I love the jagged sort of time signatures, changing tempos throughout both of those EPs, and included in that the single 8 a.m. that this band just released. But that's the real characteristic of math rock, and I think that's one of the first thing that jumps out at me about this band. I think also the DIY feel. I mentioned that they recorded their last single in a home studio, miking things themselves, and I think that was awesome, and I think that gives a lot of life to a band like this. They have a lot of just energy. You can hear in some places the vocals are a little flat, maybe from that home recording sound, But again, I think that just gives it personality, that gives it life, it gives it, it makes it easier to connect with them. You hear Patrick's voice just screaming through these records, and just the way they've captured their sound, I think is beautiful. Before you even get into the actual composition, which this band is rock solid on, I think it's a great presentation. Absolutely love, everything this band has put out. I've been listening to their EPs on a loop for the past couple weeks, and really do enjoy this.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get to actually talking to the band in a moment, as I've alluded to a couple times. But before we do it, let's talk favorite songs. You've already mentioned Will Yip Come as one of the ones you listen to. But what would you say is your favorite?
I really liked I'm Not Here. I liked the opening, which had this choppy rhythm that you mentioned earlier. It still has a very clean sound. Which to me really showed how skilled they are rhythmically and with the guitar playing. The subdued opening I really enjoyed, and then how it later transitioned to a sort of louder rock sound, because I like things that have that kind of loud, soft, loud sort of pattern. And it reminded me of kind of a throwback, which I liked as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you and I mentioned this on pretty much every episode of this podcast now. Anyone who's been watching this podcast for a while, listening to this podcast for a while, will definitely get that. I think both of us love that, ability to play with volume within a song. I always throw out the Pixies as the band that I think pioneered doing that very, very well. You saw that in the grunge movement, you see that in places in punk. But I think you're totally right. This band does that really well. My favorite song, plays with that a little bit, but it also pulls in elements of another band that I mention a lot. Comparing bands to, is the Sonic Youth vibe. Now, don't go listening to I Wish I Could Skateboard assuming they're going to sound like Sonic Youth, but on this album, or on this song in particular, I think it's constructed in a beautiful way. It's called Deconstruction, and it's off their 2017 EP Alternative Lifestyle, and it is just chock full of life. I've talked about that very sort of staccato, punctuated guitar playing in this band, and that takes restraint to do that, and you feel that on a lot of the songs. They're holding back, they're pulling back, for artistic effect. You're always sort of fighting the guitar's tendency to sort of ring out. You're fighting from getting, that urge to get flashy and show off as a musician. And they're doing that for artistic effect. At times though, the band seems to let everything loose in Reconstruction. Everything that they've restrained on those other songs on these albums, they just pack into Deconstruction. They stomp all the pedals. Their guitars are distorted. Their drummer, I believe his name is Greg, didn't talk to him as much in reporting this podcast, but he is just mashing the guitar, the drum cymbals throughout this song. The vocals get louder, even screamier in some places than they are at other points in the discography. As I said, it really is, they kind of let all that restraint loose, and it forms this just beautiful sonic wall. This growling noise on this song makes it sound different from the rest of the album. It really sort of stands out in the way I listen to it, but that is precisely why I love it. It is the perfect way, to put a very loud exclamation point on that EP. I said album earlier, but very great way to put an exclamation point on that EP that is Alternative Lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So I will thank you for joining me in this, Clem. We're going to take a chance now to give you a taste of this band again in song. When we come back as well, I'll be one-on-one with I Wish I Could Skateboard members, Patrick McPherson, the bassist Hannah, and their guitarist on the phone from Texas. His name is James Alvadro. With that, I'll say thanks for being here, Clem.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And as I said, we're going to take a quick break to play a song from I Wish I Could Skateboard. I'm going to fire away with the song I Don't Do You by I Wish I Could Skateboard. Take a listen.
Ah, yeah. it's okay.
Welcome back. Again, that was I Don't Do You by the band I Wish I Could Skateboard. This is 3 pounds of pure culture. In our first section, we talked about the band with my co-host Clement Doucette. Now we're back, but this time with the band itself. Last month, I had the opportunity to travel out to Somerville, Massachusetts to interview guitarist and vocalist Patrick McPherson, bassist Hannah Fletcher, and by phone from Tyler, Texas, James Alvarado. I believe I was saying his name wrong earlier in this podcast. I do want to correct that there. But we're going to go now to my recording of that interview, again, with Patrick, Hannah, and James. But so if we start off just kind of looking at how did this band sort of come together? Looking back, at the roots in Texas, how did this, for any of you, how did this come together?
Mm-hmm. So, I guess the start was Patrick making demos on his cell phone / garage band.
Yeah.
When he first moved to Texas and didn't have any friends yet.
I lived in Texas by myself for a while before Hannah moved out there. We were dating in college, and then I moved to Texas for a job there. And I always played music, and so I had some demos in GarageBand and whatnot. But eventually, somebody at work, James, worked at the same company that I did in Texas, and somebody that we both knew. All three of us were kind of walking out of the building one day, and this guy was like, "Hey, you guys both like music, or you're both young, or something like that. You guys should talk to each other."
You guys both wear tight pants. Is probably what he said, actually.
And so we did end up talking, and we were just like, "Yeah, we should get together and play music sometime." And
no, and then you guys realized that you both had tickets to see Def Heaven that weekend.
Yeah. So we went to
Dallas.
Def Heaven. You were there by that time.
I think it was the next day.
It was the next day, yeah.
Yeah.
It was on a Thursday that we met, and we went to Def Heaven on a Friday.
Yeah.
Consummated the relationship on a Saturday.
But yeah, I guess that's kind of how it got started. And then we had to find a drummer, which we actually found by just hanging up flyers in Tyler, Texas.
Yeah.
With the tear off strip with the email, and
Yeah.
we actually got
We found that copy of the flyer the other day, and
Yeah.
it was kind of funny because it had sounds like and all the bands that we want to sound like.
That was an interesting list of bands.
I know, it's funny to revisit it 5 years later.
We need to find that. I've got Telegram open right now. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, open up the list, James, if you have it available.
Yeah, probably find it too, but
Read it out to us.
James will find it.
Yeah, but we also tried a Craigslist ad, and people responded, but no one that was too promising. And then Brandon sent us a grammatically correct email, and we were impressed just by that. So we were sold, hired, we like you. Yeah, and then we got together with him, and he was good at drums and easygoing, and
Yeah.
so. Yeah, so it worked out.
And he owned a drum set.
Which none of us did, and most of the other people we met.
Some
with
people would
didn't
email
either.
you and say "Oh, do you have a drum set?"
Yeah.
Sorry. We didn't at the time. Now we do. But
Also, it's funny because then we recorded so we like practiced a bunch, the four of us, but then we like recorded our first EP, like before we'd ever like played our first show or anything. So we were like,
the show was booked by the time we recorded, but we had
Yeah.
not played a show when we recorded the first EP, which was kind of weird.
And we were like
but-
in a studio. We weren't like doing it ourselves. We were like kind of
Yeah.
doing that, but that was kind of cool.
I majorly respect that.
Yeah.
That's what we do it.
I mean, yeah, it's like good to have a deadline, I guess. Like, all right, we have to be
Yeah.
able to play these songs well enough to like have it recorded by this day.
Did you find the list, James?
I did. It's American football, of course. It's like that's embarrassing to have up there now.
Well,
They weren't
title
as
fight.
popular at that time. I will say that they were not as popular at that time before the reunion and everything. But
Sure, that's true. Title fight, Sunny Day Real Estate, Chavez, Pavement, Cloud Nothings, Broken Social Scene, The Men, who I think we sound most like actually. Real
I've
Estate.
never listened to that band.
What?
I have.
Real
you
Estate,
probably heard it.
Hum, and Modest Mouse. I think you could tell which suggestions were mine, you know.
I mean, I know which ones were. Dakota might not, but he just met you. But
I think mine were Chavez, Pavement, Cloud Nothings, The Men, and Hum.
Pavement's got to be my favorite in there. Pavement's a very good band.
Man, I like you, Dakota. Good job.
So you guys get together, you start playing music. Where'd the name come from?
Long
kinda
story.
like, I mean, Patrick came up with it.
it
but,
just came to me basically.
like we were trying to
but-
pick a name for a while, and like we had other ones that we considered, but like hadn't landed on anything.
None worth mentioning. They were
I don't
really
even
bad.
remember most of them. I remember one, but most of them I don't remember.
I think the only one I remember was, other than I Wish I Could Skateboard, was Spring Hall, which was really bad.
I remember that one now you mention it.
Yeah.
I mean, it basically just did. James and I were trying to learn how to do some skateboarding stuff at the time, and I remember we were at a show in Tyler, and just we were all there, and just while somebody else was playing, I don't know why it came to me, but I was just like, oh, I wish I could skateboard. That could be a band name, and I don't know. Kind of as soon as we like talked about it, we were like, yeah, that's it.
Right, like at first, like we were like laughing about it, like,
Yeah.
haha, wouldn't that be funny? And they were like, well, actually, we could just like call it that, and like it's actually a good name. Like it is a joke, but like,
Yeah.
Have any of you guys learned to skateboard since then?
Not really. No. I can barely. Several years ago I could barely ollie, but I haven't really done much with it since. I wish I had more time to spend on it, but
I ollied over a speed bump, and that's the peak.
there you
wow,
go.
There you go.
good.
Haven't really kept up with it since. And mostly so that we could keep our name from being a lie. And we get asked if we could skateboard, you know, probably once a show at least.
Yep.
It's a good conversation starter.
I don't mind it. Yeah. People also like to ask us what we're gonna do if we learn how to skateboard. Are we gonna change our name? But no, we're not.
We
going
won't,
to.
and we won't.
Now I'm glad I can skateboard.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go. That would be almost as good.
Yeah.
that's right.
So, talking about Tyler then, you know, obviously, I have not personally been to Texas. I don't think many of the people listening to our podcast even have.
Yeah.
Can you give me sort of a sense of what Tyler was, you know, not even speaking specifically about music, but just kind of what was that community like?
Who can describe this best?
Everybody still rides around on horses.
That's not true. All right, James. Well, you still live there, so like, give your take, and then we'll correct it.
Oh man, I don't know. It's in the middle of East Texas, which is I've lived all over Texas. I grew up like 20 minutes from the border. I lived in the DFW Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth area. I lived in Weatherford, Texas, which is like at the gateway of West Texas. Then I lived in Big Spring, which is in West Texas, which is a terrible place. And then I lived in East Texas, and one of my first observations when I moved to East Texas was I was in college, so the first observation was the girls were pretty good looking there compared to West Texas. But second observation was it's the most racist place I'd ever lived in. And I'd say that still is my opinion of it still. But it's sort of like a bigger town than you would think. It's like more sprawling than you would think. Like it takes like 30 minutes to get from one side of the town to the other. Not just because it's big, but also just because the roads are poorly designed, I think. And then it's sort of like a hub for East Texas.
Yeah, there's a lot of like really small towns like within driving distance where people like either have to go to Tyler for like anything, like to go to Walmart or like
right,
send their kids to school or whatever.
There's more to do there than you would think. Like it has a surprisingly, at least back when we started the band, it had a surprisingly healthy music and art scene. More so than you would assume, you know, like, but still not a ton to do. Like, no bands I liked were really are really, they don't really have Tyler as a tour stop, you know what I mean? So I don't know what else.
Well, we can talk more about the music side of it. You know, you guys are, you know, recording, you get that first EP done before you do a show. Mm-hmm. You know, what was that music scene that you were bringing that EP into? You know, kind of what was the process of starting playing like?
So probably like the coolest thing about the Tyler music scene, which I don't think this exists anymore, but when we were there, was that there was this like open mic night that was like very well attended and like was just like very legitimate. So actually like, before we had a drummer, we like performed there like a couple times, just the three of us, to just be like, so I guess that's not totally true that like our first show was after, but like our first full band show. But yeah, like people would like actually like go to it, like people like were into like the bands that would play, and like it was just like pretty cool. So yeah, I thought that was really cool.
I'm not necessarily an open mic connoisseur or anything, but it's like the best open mic night that I've ever been to, because, and I think part of it was because like there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on in Tyler, so people like it was something to do, and for people who were interested in music, it was something for them to go to. But yeah, you just had a great turnout every single week, even of people there to just listen, which is like I think kind of rare.
Yeah, because I feel like in a big city you would like go to an open mic night and it would be like,
so like I don't know, we kind of met people through that and met some of the bands that we played our first shows with. But
mm-hmm. I remember like the first few times we went, we were like, this is really bizarre, because like, why are so many people at an open mic night? Yeah, because, you know, I was living in Dallas, Fort Worth, you know, before then, and Patrick and Hannah are from the Atlanta area, so it's like, I don't think like an open mic night is what you're looking forward to do on the weekends, you know?
Right. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, we like Patrick said, met a lot of like bands and people in bands through that. And then yeah, I mean, I guess there was like a pretty small, like close-knit group of bands that like would play most of the sort of indie shows. So like, I mean, we sort of like tried to not like feed into that too much, but like if we were ever like putting together a bill, it would kind of be like the same pool of like 3 to 5 bands that we would like consider like asking to play.
Yeah, you ran out of bands quickly if you're trying to not play with the same people over and over again. But
yeah, so I mean, there
are
like good and bad, I guess, but you know, but like people did like come out to shows and stuff, which was cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think just like the main thing is there wasn't a lot else going on. So like versus here where there's like so many like good shows happening like all the time. So it's like more competition, I guess.
Yeah. There's pluses and minuses to both, because like in Tyler, people would come out more easily, I think, but you know, then there's just less variety and less interesting stuff going on in general. Whereas in Boston, like,
and it seems like it'd be hard to like reach new people too, because like people would come, but it might be like the same people. Which I mean, it's great that they're coming back, but like also you just don't know if like new people are hearing your music.
Yeah, I think maybe also setting the scene is like Tyler. The sound of bands in Tyler was pretty consistent, maybe, or like a lot of like roots rock and Americana and floppy hats and like people who like Kurt Weill and stuff like that. And Tame Impala and things like that. Like I used to joke that we were like the most punk band in town and we were not necessarily,
We might have been.
that, but so yeah, we would definitely it was neat because we definitely sounded like a departure from everybody else there, and people were really friendly to us, which was nice.
Yeah, people were really nice.
Going back to that interview in just a moment, but first we want to take a quick break now to play you another song by Wish I Could Skateboard off that debut EP we've talked so much about on this episode. This song's called Some Thoughts I Had. The EP is called I Appreciate Your Lack of Confidence. After this, we'll go right back to my conversation with Patrick, Hannah, and James, but first take a listen again to Some Thoughts I Had.
On a cold day, you complain to me that your life's not panning out. I guess I wanted everything to work out perfectly. From the back row, you can watch things unfold, and no one has to know. No one has to know. Swallow your medicine. Your headache's coming back with a vengeance. I can't remember my dreams when I drag myself out from the sheets, and the sun outside is barely alive, and I can't bear to open my eyes. But at least I've got you by my side.
Well, so talking about some of those interactions with people, you mentioned, seeing some people coming to shows and taking stock of who was there. Over time, you guys spent, a good couple of years, playing in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
How did you see kind of your band or your following all grow over those years?
We definitely saw it grow, which was cool. I don't know, people there would mosh at our shows, which I thought was weird,
Yeah.
but kind of cool in a way.
We played at that open mic night, was our kind of debut or whatever, and I remember after that first one of the dudes from another band in town, one of the more popular bands, came up to us and said, were those covers, and when we told them that it wasn't, they got really excited because it's a new band playing original songs, that's cool. Tyler's a lot of people playing Stevie Ray Vaughan songs at a restaurant while you eat your salad, that type of vibe at a lot of places. So when a new band comes around, I think we all kind of get excited. I say we now because I've lived here for so long. And yeah, we had a really positive reaction to those first few shows, and then, you know, we were only there for like, we were only a presence maybe in the Tyler music scene for like 6 months maybe. Is that right? And I guess our last show, we played at a basement venue, and there was probably like 100 people packed into that room, and it was really neat. So I guess I'm skipping a lot of stuff, but we did seem to like garner a following, and people were really nice and seemed to like us. And, you know, by the time we played our last show in town before Patrick and Hannah moved away, it was pretty, it was cool. I remember we played I Don't Do You, and, you know, we're a few shows into our band, you know, and like we get to that quiet part of that song, and people were singing it in the crowd, which was bizarre for any band I had ever played in before. That had never happened. And that was really cool. Yeah. And like that last show, it was like people knew all the words and stuff. It was interesting.
So far that hasn't happened.
Yeah, and then we moved away
anywhere else
to
at
start
Tyler,
over.
but yeah, we moved to Boston to start from scratch again. But,
Well, yes, let's talk about that move. You know, I know we talked off camera on you know, the background of that, but, you know, why did you guys decide to leave Tyler?
yeah, so I moved to Tyler originally for a job after I graduated from school. I got an engineering job out there, and I didn't really know anything about Tyler. I just like needed a job, and it was like, okay, well, I got a job offer from this company, and I don't have any other job offers right now, so I'm gonna move out there and see how this goes. And I'm really glad I ended up doing that, because I met James and we started this whole thing. But was never really a place that I thought I would live my whole life, and I didn't really like my job there very much. So kind of from the beginning, I was like thinking, okay, what's my next move here? And eventually I found another job offer, which ended up being up here. And Hannah and I
And I wanted to go back and get my master's, and there wasn't really any opportunity for that in Tyler. And up here, there was like a lot more options, so it kind of worked out for both of us.
So we were kind of open to just honestly moving anywhere.
Yeah, like we didn't have any family up here or anything yet. We do now. Luckily, Patrick's brother and his wife moved up here. But yeah, we didn't at the time, so we were just like, well, Boston seems cool.
Yeah. So we came up here, and didn't really do anything with the band for a couple years after moving up here, because it was like, you know, James still lived in Texas, Brandon, our drummer, still lived in Texas.
We were sort of kicking around the idea of me moving up there too.
Yeah.
But it just never happened. And then Brandon moved back to Houston. Our drummer was from Houston, and moved back there. Actually, no, he went to San Marcos for school. He was a freshman when he was still starting college when we started the band, I think. So, yeah, he went to school, you know, in a town near Austin, and then ended up moving back to Houston after he finished and all that. Man, that's a long time that's passed. I didn't realize.
I mean, we started in 2013. Now it's 2018.
There you go. And so when you did start, you know, decide to start making music again as the band, how did that sort of come together? And we can tackle this from two sides of, you know, you two, Patrick and Hannah, and then we'll talk about it from James's perspective. But for you two, how did that side of that come together?
It was always like a thorn in our sides as far as like, all right, what are we going to do about this? You know, because we had just like, you know, we really enjoyed it, and we, you know, had gotten like, you know, a modest but like kind of cool following. We were just like, are we just gonna like throw this away, or like?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we could have just started another band from scratch, like something completely different.
Which we talked about, but.
And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll still do that at some point, but I just felt like we kind of had something good going with I Wish I Could Skateboard. We didn't want to just completely abandon it.
Yeah.
Because kind of we never like James mentioned, we weren't really in.
I mean, from the
playing
time
out
we played
Tyler
our
for
first
all that
show
long,
in
so.
February of 2014 there, and you and I moved in May, so it was literally like 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, we had been
of, like,
practicing.
actively
We'd been
playing
practicing,
shows.
and
but like 3
recording
months of like
before that,
actively
and-
playing shows in Tyler.
But
So not that much.
where's I going with that? So yeah, we just didn't want to give up on that, because we kind of never felt like there was more to do with it. the project. So I don't know, we just were thinking, what can we do? How can we keep it going? And so, I mean, I guess the most obvious thing is, well, let's try to play some shows around here. If James isn't going to move up here, then we'll recruit some other people to fill in, which I recruited my brother, Tim, who's playing guitar, and my friend Greg, who's playing drums for us. And so when we play in Boston, we have that lineup, and it's been going good.
Yep.
Just appreciate Tim and Greg doing that for us, because they didn't write the songs, they just came in and learned them, and they've been doing great. So
hired guns that don't get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. And yeah, so James, from your side, we have a little bit more of that interview to show you, but we're going to take one more quick break now to show you first a song that Clem and I talked about in our intro. It's from the EP that Patrick, Hannah, and James just created in 2017 as a revival of sorts for I Wish I Could Skateboard. This is Deconstruction, one of my personal favorite songs off of Alternative Lifestyle. Take a listen. Well, so let's talk about the Boston shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know we've kind of alluded to this in a couple of questions so far, but you know, how does the process of booking shows and you know, I guess we'll just start there. How does the process of booking shows and touring, you know, differ here than it, you know, from what it was down in Tyler?
I don't even remember how we got shows in Tyler. I think we were involved with putting more of them together, maybe.
Yeah, in Tyler is more like once you got to know sort of the core group of people, it's kind of like, well, that's all that was going on. It's maybe like 4 or 5 people at most booking shows, I would say. And once they knew who you were, then like it wasn't, you could just ask them or tell them, hey, we want to play a show, or they would ask you. And there wasn't really much more to it than that. I do kind of remember in the beginning in Tyler being like, you know, we don't know these people, so like how do we get to know them? And it's always like a weird thing. And at one show I just went up and like randomly introduced myself to a person, which is like very difficult for me to do, but we ended up playing a show with that guy's band, which our first show was actually with that guy's band, so that kind of led to that happening. And then here, I mean, it's similar in that regard. It's like, you know, you can go to a million shows and like still not really necessarily know any of the people that are putting them on. So when we were starting out trying to get our first show here, it was like just cold emailing basically. And Daniel Carswell, who's an amazing person, was the first one to book us at Charlie's Kitchen. And I'm forever grateful to him for that. So from there, I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, you talk to bands, or you figure out, go on Facebook and see who put the event together and message that person and see if they have any slots you could get on. That's kind of like what our process has been so far.
And like now I think like we're starting to get like slightly more people like knowing us, so like we have been like getting asked to play shows like with a little more frequency, which is nice. Just like when, you know, like Ryan at O'Brien's or like Daniel at Charlie's Kitchen is like putting something together, you know, they might email us to see if we like want to be on it, which is cool. But I feel like we're still like kind of getting there with just people like knowing who we are, and there's just like so many good bands in Boston, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, talking about some of those good bands in Boston, you know, I know we were talking about Future Teens, but you know, are there bands around here that you guys have gotten to know, you know, as people you're playing alongside, or you know?
I mean, I guess like your big one would be like the other one you're in.
Oh yeah. I also play bass in Funeral Advantage. I don't know if you know them or not, but
which
so I got
like,
to know Tyler
like, we were like
pretty well
fans of that band. Like
that's like the first local band that I ever saw at a show, and I was like, oh, that band's really cool, I want to check them out. And now like 3 years later or whatever it is, I play bass in the band.
Gonna take it over.
So I know him pretty well. As far as other bands we know, I don't know.
I don't want it to be the kind of thing where like I say like, oh, I know this person, but then like they're like, I don't know who that is.
And we don't like know anybody that well, but like we started to become friendly with some folks around town, I guess.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess like
we're just too shy to really. It takes us a long time to get to know people.
But like, I mean, but a lot of my like favorite bands in Boston would be, of course, Future Teens, and like, you know, I have met them and they're lovely people. Me and Capri's, it's really good.
Love that band.
Horse Jumper of Love, I don't know them at all, but I just really like them. And then Funeral Advantage, which now that you're like in that band, I'm like, I don't know if I'm allowed to listen to them, but if I ever like put them on at home, I'm like, this just seems like self-serving in a weird way. Who else? Strange Mangers, they're really good.
They haven't been doing anything in a while, but still hoping they put out that album sometime.
Who are your other favorite Boston bands?
I'm trying to think.
Did I name all of them?
Probably forgetting something.
I like Pile.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't even count, but
Doesn't even count. They're too good.
They're too
Doesn't
popular
count.
now. They're too popular now. Yeah.
No, it still counts. Yeah, they're really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Well, and so you guys mentioned trying to put together another album, but any other kind of long-term plans for what you want to see this band do?
I mean, we want to tour again because it was like really fun, and like I feel like we just like it. I don't know. Not to say that like we're like in it for just like people like listening to us or whatever, but I mean I guess we are, but like I don't know, I feel like it had like a significant like effect on the like popularity of our band or just like people's awareness of it. Like I feel like touring is like the number one way to get people to like listen to your music.
It is, yeah. I mean, like, you can play shows in your hometown, and it's very difficult for anyone outside your hometown to get to know you at all. And touring, you're literally just out there playing to, at our stage, we're out there playing to people who never heard us before, which the whole DIY touring phenomenon, it's kind of like interesting to me that it even exists. I think that's one of the great things about the time period that we live in.
Of the internet.
Yeah. Where like basically pretty much unknown bands like us can just go out and, there will be other bands in that city that are like kind enough to agree to play with us, and people coming to see them will check us out, and some of them might like it. So yeah, goals for the band. I mean, we just want to try to tour as much as we can, which for us is unfortunately not that much because like we're trying to balance like our other jobs and everything because like you have to pay your bills and everything. So
and then of course like being kind of long distance with James, like it's hard to get together with him. But yeah, like hopefully next year we can do something similar, like another week long or at least like long weekend type thing, and then hopefully putting out a full-length album next year.
We could probably get more creative with doing short runs where we don't necessarily have to take too much time off from work.
I'd like to have an album printed on vinyl.
That would be cool.
Yeah, me too. Who knows if that'll happen, but
It'd be nice to have an album printed on vinyl and have somebody else pay for that process.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
There you go. Vinyl's where it's at. Although I like the cassettes. You guys just sound like cassettes.
Yeah.
On Bandcamp. I like that.
Yeah, I do like cassettes. Like I like them more than CDs, I guess. But
that's going to be it for my interview with the members of I Wish I Could Skateboard. As we let yet another song of theirs play us out, I will say a huge thanks to Patrick McPherson and Hannah Fletcher for opening their home to me to record our interview in. Thanks also to James Alvarado for joining us, and to I Wish I Could Skateboard as a unit for allowing us to use their music several times on this podcast. You can follow I Wish I Could Skateboard on Facebook and Instagram, and can hear their music on Spotify and Bandcamp, among other music streaming sites. The song you're hearing right now is entitled Will Yip Come and is off their 2017 EP Alternative Lifestyle we've talked so much about. This is the song Clement Doucette mentioned earlier in the broadcast when we had him with us. That would be it for this episode of 3 Pounds of Pure Culture, however. For all of us at HUD-TV, I'm Dakota Antelman. Thanks for listening.